A new wind is rising, bringing change, bringing the all-new Ford Windstar, a totally new minivan. Windstar is the only minivan that combines standard dual airbags, 5-mile-an-hour bumpers, and 4-wheel anti-lock brakes. Plus, it meets all passenger car safety standards. It's safety that takes the minivan in a whole new direction. The all-new front-wheel drive Ford Windstar. The future of minivans begins today.
We're about to present an interview with one of the most controversial men in America today. His name is Louis Farrakhan, leader of the movement called the Nation of Islam. His speeches and those of some of his colleagues have been seen as anti-Semitic, anti-Catholic, anti-white. So why would we give him a place to air those views? Well, we do it so that you can make your own informed judgment about what he really stands for.
Few people do know the views of the Nation of Islam or its leader, Louis Farrakhan, and you must know both to decide where you may, if at all, agree or where you may want to challenge and condemn. That's why I went to Chicago last week to interview this man who is both inspired and inflamed. His message and the man himself are contradictory and complicated. The man who makes this beautiful music is better known for booming rhetoric and widely dissonant chords. The hand that caresses this violin on one stage can condemn with a gesture on another.
And if you measure white people up against the Torah and the law, the Injil or the Good News, or this book, the Quran, which is the criterion, they are absolutely devils.
Louis Abdul Farrakhan, minister and leader of the Nation of Islam, was born Louis Eugene Walcott in Roxbury, Massachusetts, 60 years ago. He heads a movement that may have as few as 10,000, as many as 200,000 members. The actual numbers are closely guarded. Farrakhan says his message is black love, but it often has overtones of hate.
And because I said that the Holocaust of black people was 100 times worse than the Holocaust of Jews, they were angry with me for even comparing this. And it is because you feel that your life is so much more sacred than the lives of the Goyim, or the lives of the Gentiles, or the lives of the Asian, Arabs, and Africans.
Farrakhan's Nation of Islam is the successor to a movement started by the self-proclaimed prophet Elijah Muhammad in the 1930s. It weathered a split in the 1960s when its most popular minister, Malcolm X, defected. He was assassinated in 1965, a murder that still has elements of mystery about it to this day. Elijah Muhammad died in 1975, and shortly after, Farrakhan became the head of a restructured Nation of Islam. Farrakhan acquired an unlikely partner in 1985. Libyan strongman Muammar Gaddafi gave him a $5 million loan, interest-free, to start up a business based on individual black entrepreneurs. The Nation of Islam now operates several profitable businesses. Its social agenda is aggressive and surprisingly conservative. Its members shun guns, abstain from drugs and alcohol, and follow strict dietary laws. They are against abortion and homosexuality and for law and order. In prisons, they run an intensive outreach ministry. On the streets, Farrakhan's followers patrol black housing areas, battling drug dealing and other crime. They're seeking government contracts for this kind of work. Farrakhan himself has been married for 36 years, has 9 children and 24 grandchildren. He lives in this ornate mansion in the Hyde Park neighborhood of Chicago. It was built by founder Elijah Muhammad in 1972 to serve both as his official residence and the nation's headquarters. We met amid its mirrored walls and white marble floors, and I discovered that while his public rhetoric is fiery, Louis Farrakhan can be surprisingly soft-spoken. Mr. Farrakhan, our whole country has been moving toward integration, equal rights. You don't want integration. You want separate schools, and if possible, a separate territory in this country or in Africa.
Separation is not the main goal. That is the goal. If we cannot get along in peace, then we have to separate. Like two married people who have tried to live together and have irreconcilable differences. They go before a judge, and there's a settlement, and there's alimony.
And you want reparations like alimony?
Yes.
To every African American? You want money paid to every African American?
Why should not America do something to repair the damage that has been done to black people for over 400 years of oppression?
By giving everyone money?
Not money. A fool and his money will soon part. If you gave our people with their mentality today $20,000, $40,000, $100,000, it would go right back out of our community tomorrow. But if we are allowed land and money, a way to become economically self-sufficient, to do for ourselves, to build homes, to build factories, then we would say America is beginning to repair the damage.
You have had great success with many of the Nation of Islam men as security guards in your own projects and other projects, sometimes better than the police. And you are hoping that the federal and the state and the local governments will use taxpayers' money to hire your people at various projects. And then your prophet and mentor, Elijah Muhammad, said, and I have the quote, "The white man is so wicked and filthy that God calls him the skunk of the planet Earth." How do you expect taxpayers' money, that's all Americans, white and black, to want to fund the Nation of Islam when there is language like that?
The language is harsh, but the reality of black existence and black suffering is also very harsh.
Harsh, you call it, other people would call it vile. Do you stand by that language?
The harsh language was designed to knock on your door and get your attention.
It did.
And that we did.
The man whose harsh language attracted attention to the Nation of Islam most recently was Khalid Abdul Muhammad, then the nation's official spokesman and one of Louis Farrakhan's most trusted aides. In a speech at King College in New Jersey last November, Khalid proudly proclaimed he was an anti-Semite and called Jews bloodsuckers. When the speech attracted criticism, Farrakhan demoted Khalid. He said Khalid had used mean-spirited language, but had also spoken some truths. I would like to go through some of the things that he said and have you tell me, if you will, where are the truths and which are the truths that you still stand by. Jews are sucking the blood of the blacks. Jewelry is really Jew-elry, because Jews have been stealing all over the face of the planet Earth. That's why they're called Goldstein or Silverstein. No matter who sits in the seat at the White House, Jews control that seat. Jews control the media, especially NBC, ABC, and CBS. By the way, out of the 5 networks, including CNN and Fox, only one CEO is Jewish. Final. The Pope is a no-good cracker. Somebody needs to raise that dress up and see what's really under there. Which are the truth?
While I rebuked the vile manner of his speech, I said I stand by those truths that he spoke. I stand by the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now, if we are specific here, I cannot answer about jewelry or the name Goldstein or Rubenstein. Those Khalid Abdul Muhammad would have to answer. But if he calls Jews bloodsuckers of the black community, if we're going to be honest, in the 60s, many Jews were the merchants, they were the landlords, they were the furniture persons that we bought furniture from, they were the clothiers that we bought clothing from, and they grew in strength from our trade with them. Today, it's the Arabs and the Koreans and others. So sucking the blood means taking from the life of a community that it sustains your life.
Many Koreans came to this country out of their own kind of slavery with very little money and managed to take over working day and night and opening these
But how
stores.
did they do that, Miss Walters? Their culture and their cohesiveness allowed them to pool their resources.
Fine, but in
this.
putting down, I mean, you are trying to raise the culture and the initiative of the African Americans, and it's there to be raised. But is the way to raise it calling those who had raised themselves, whether they were Jews, Koreans, Arabs, bloodsuckers?
That is not my language. So
but you stood by that truth. I mean, this is what one has to clear up.
Miss Walters, I told you what truths that I stood by.
Okay,
but
do you stand by that?
We are dying. Others are growing to strength. Now, if you ask, what is a bloodsucker? A bloodsucker is a leech. And when you put a leech on your skin, that leech sucks blood from you in order to maintain its own life. After all, Miss Walters, we have fought, bled, and died in every theater of war that this country has had for a freedom that we yet don't enjoy.
But whites can say, and Irish and Scots and Jews and Italians, that they have also fought and died in wars. What I am asking and what people are asking, and I can go on with other questions, is how does it help your people to denigrate others?
It does not help us to denigrate people. But you know, Miss Walters, as well as I, when you exploit the ignorance of a people, that is not somebody lifting themselves up. That's somebody lifting themselves up at the expense of somebody else. It means that something is wrong and very wrong.
This book is one of the tools the nation uses to point out what it sees as wrong. It details what the Nation of Islam's research department describes as a secret relationship between blacks and Jews, claiming the Jews were large-scale slave owners. It is said to be based on Jewish writings, but scholars have criticized the book as inaccurate and distorted. The statistics that you give can be rebuked and refuted by Jewish scholars, but I'd like to go beyond you and me arguing about how many Jews there were as slaveholders. That was over 100 years ago. We now have relations with Germany. We don't hold what happened in Hitler's Germany against the young Germans. Why now are the sins of the fathers being visited upon the sons?
Miss Walters, you have relationships with Germany today because Germany has moved to right a terrible wrong.
Why pick on the Jews particularly, which is what you've done?
I have not picked on the Jews in particular. You know, this idea of a victim.
No. It's not the secret history of blacks and whites, or blacks and Scots, or blacks and Italians. It's blacks and Jews.
And the reason for that, Miss Walters, is because we all know that Gentile whites had some part in it. But there are many Jews who do not know the role that some Jews played in the slave trade. And it was a prominent role. But whether it was marginal or prominent, the fact of the matter is Jews have succeeded in the world. Blacks are at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder.
But you know, especially in our time, Jews have felt that they had a desire and an obligation to help blacks. We had the civil rights marches in which you had so many Jews who participated, and you had young Jewish men who were murdered, like Andrew Goodman and Michael Schwerner. The Jews who have felt that they were more allied with blacks and perhaps even other nationalities would feel hurt. Can you understand how they feel?
Can you understand, Miss Walters, how we feel? Blacks were bitten by vicious dogs and beaten with clubs and cattle prodded and water hoses put on us. 2 or 3 whites died. Many, many blacks died. Died for what? That we could drink water at a fountain and go to toilet? What was our sweat and our blood in all of these wars for? That we should die to go to a toilet? That we should die to have a cup of coffee? Can you understand our hurt?
I can never fully understand what your people went through. I can try as a human being, regardless of what my religion or race may be. I can try, you can try. What I am asking is, can't the Nation of Islam put an end to the name-calling? I would like to play something to you that I think is particularly horrific. If it happened in a white man's mouth, if I did it, I couldn't even get the words out of my mouth. And maybe once and for all we can talk about what you consider true or not true or anti-Semitic and so forth. This was after Keene College, and this is one of your ministers again, Khalid Muhammad. We have a tape. I'd like you to listen to it.
But it's that old no-good Jew. It's that old imposter Jew. It's that old hook-nosed, bagel-eating, lock-eating Johnny-come-lately perpetrating a fraud just crawled out of the caves and hills of Europe, so-called damn Jew. Those words, again, represent Brother Khalid's anger and frustration. It is not proper, in my judgment, to mock physical characteristics, cultural habits of another people. What I'm telling you is this, that when I have to look at a movie and see a black person depicted as a buffoon.
You don't anymore. It's changed.
But the image is there.
Society's
When I've got to go to school and read a textbook about little black Sambo.
It's changed. It's
When
no
I've
longer
got
there.
to hear people calling me a burrhead nigger and making mockery of the thickness of my lips and the broadness of my nose.
Only ignorant people do that.
So if Brother Khalid is saying that which stings and hurts, then look at it and say, that's terrible use of language. And then go back and look at the terrible use of language by your people.
But this is the present he's saying this. This isn't 10 years ago or 20
But
years
our
ago.
people are suffering, Miss Walters, in the present for what was done in the past. Yes, there should be a change. We should become more civil in our language. But that rebuke and that stinging language of Brother Khalid is enough to make you say, my God, this is terrible.
Is it enough to make you say that it is wrong and that you disown it as a truth?
But I have said that.
Okay, I think people would like to hear you say it now.
I have said that, but I don't want my words to be used to create division. Khalid Muhammad is my brother. Khalid Muhammad is my son in the ministry. And Khalid Muhammad is a helper of mine. So I am trying to correct him, but not destroy him. And I will not do that so that others can say Farrakhan condemned his brother and renounced him. I'm not in the renunciation, denunciation pattern. I'm in a redemptive pattern.
Although Minister Farrakhan told us last week in our interview that he rebuked Khalid Muhammad, just this week in Washington, Mr. Muhammad told an audience at Howard University, and I quote, "I'm going to be like a pit bull. That's the way I'm going to be against the Jews," unquote. He also made inflammatory anti-white remarks.
Incredible stridency there. Coming up on the program, Louis Farrakhan on the assassination of Malcolm X. Did he play a role? And his view of welfare and black fatherhood. Barbara's interview continues.
2020, brought to you by Ford and your Ford dealers. Have you driven a Ford lately?
What is it about Ford Taurus that makes it America's best-selling car? Is it the number of ways it finds to protect you and your passengers? Its confident feel on the road? Or the fact that we improved it over 50 ways to make it the best Taurus ever? Whatever the reasons, you've made Ford Taurus the best-selling car in America. Again.
Imagine introducing cranberries that gets inside you in a whole new light and carries you away. Crystal Light. Crystal Light. 5 refreshing calories. Imagine a breeze. A cranberry breeze. It tastes so good all over. Smooth and fresh and juicy. Crystal Light. It's cranberries in a whole new light. Imagine a breeze.
To see which fat-free Italian dressing tastes best, try undressing. See? Wishbone Healthy Sensation is richer in peppers and spices. That's why in a recent taste test it beat Kraft-Free nearly 2 to 1. Revealing, isn't it? Wishbone, just look at that taste.
Let's peek in the dirty dictionary under E. Espresso meso, the coffee grinds you've spilled on the kitchen floor. Sole molds, the compressed dirt that falls from the soles of your boots. Dustbuster, the definition of quick cleanup.
Here's something different, sweetie.
Constantly switching your dog's food can sometimes lead to finicky eating behavior. So feed your dog a consistent diet. Purina Dog Chow every day.
Orion Pictures presents a story of 2 friends.
You gotta look them up for me.
And the favor.
You did me the favor. What are you talking about?
That came between them.
You're mad at me.
Oh, the favor.
We'll laugh about this when we're 90.
Rated R. Starts Friday, April 29th.
This weekend, ABC takes you on a time trek for family entertainment. First on Saturday, the crew of the Enterprise is heading home.
Everybody remember where we parked.
To the 20th century. William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy in Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. Then they prayed for a miracle. They got Clint Eastwood.
His eyes, something strange about him.
Sunday at a special time, Pale Rider. Take a time trek for entertainment. Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home Saturday, and Pale Rider Sunday here on ABC.
He brought you the Tommyknockers, It, and Stand By Me.
It's coming.
Now the master of suspense brings his all-time bestseller to ABC.
What did you people do?
The end of the world is just the beginning. Stephen King's The Stand, Sunday, May 8th, here on ABC. Parental discretion is advised.
Nearly 30 years have passed, and still there is mystery surrounding the murder of Malcolm X. The movie Malcolm X renewed interest in the whole affair. There have been allegations that won't go away and questions that have remained unanswered about Louis Farrakhan's connection to the murder. Was he involved? Where was he the day Malcolm X died? Barbara's interview continues.
The assassination of Malcolm X stunned blacks and whites alike. He was gunned down in 1965 while addressing a meeting in New York's Harlem. Charismatic and controversial, Malcolm had broken with founding prophet Elijah Muhammad and started a separate organization of his own. His murder was apparently plotted by members of the nation's Newark Mosque in New Jersey. Followers of Malcolm X suspected at the time that Louis Farrakhan was somehow involved, and Malcolm's widow, Betty Shabazz, said recently she thought Farrakhan played a role in the murder. The controversy endures. Just recently, in an open letter to you published in Boston, 5 African-American ministers of different denominations asked this question. I will quote it. You wrote in Muhammad Speaks, "The die is set and Malcolm shall not escape. Such a man as Malcolm is worthy of death." That's your quotation. These ministers ask, given that 5 members of the Newark Mosque were identified as Malcolm X's killers by one of the assassins, and that you were reportedly at the Newark Mosque at the day of the assassination, what responsibility do you bear for Malcolm X's death? That's the end of their quote. Dr. Betty Shabazz, the widow of Malcolm X, also believes you helped plot his death. So may I respectfully ask their question, what responsibility do you bear for his death? Do you approve of the fact that Malcolm X was murdered? Were you at all involved in that murder?
I'll take your last question first. No, I was not in any way involved in his murder. I did say those words, or write those words, but that's not the full statement. I said such a man as Malcolm is worthy of death, and were it not for Elijah Muhammad's faith in God, it would have been so. Elijah Muhammad told all of us as his followers to leave Malcolm alone and leave Malcolm to Allah. I was in Newark at that time, the time of his assassination. It was my turn to be rotated into Newark to handle the preaching or the teaching that day. And that is my reason for being in Newark. Betty Shabazz never said that Farrakhan was a plotter in the death of Malcolm, but she said that Farrakhan helped to create the atmosphere. And that I can agree with. And in defending the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, charge and countercharge, we created an atmosphere. But don't leave out the United States government. Don't leave out the FBI, who had worked for years to separate Malcolm from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now, the last part of your question, do I approve? At that stage of my development, I was very angry with Malcolm for what Malcolm had done. I was hurt by his assassination. I can't say that I approved, and I really didn't disapprove. I was numb. But today, looking back, Malcolm would be so much more valuable to us alive.
The number one problem in this country today is crime and violence, especially among young African Americans. You give specific solutions to the problems of crime, violence. Can you tell us what they are?
Well, first, black people have been taught systematically to hate themselves. So our people have a hatred for self, which manifests itself in our disunity and our inclination to violence among self. We must teach our people the knowledge of self. Self-knowledge produces self-love. And I'm going around this nation talking to young black men, teaching them to love themselves and making them to pledge to do good by self and others, and thereby not needing a gun.
There is a great breakdown of family in this country and illegitimate births. Do you have solutions?
Yes. The family, however, was broken down because of slavery. The slave master fed us, clothed us, and sheltered us. So that mentality obtains to this day. If we really want to be respected as men, then we must take up our own responsibility, not just making a baby, but fathering it, maintaining it, nurturing it.
You're against welfare?
Yes. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says welfare spelled backwards means farewell to independent and creative thinking. So as fast as we can, we move our people away from welfare.
In an interview in the Washington Times in 1990, you said, the crack epidemic did not start until after Louis Farrakhan became the voice of the poor. And about guns, you said, somebody is inspiring the black people to kill off each other. We believe it's the government of the United States of America. Do you really believe that crack and guns are being introduced into black neighborhoods by the United States government? And if so, do you have proof?
Every black leader that we have had of substance, the government has been his or her opposer. The fact of the matter is that there was no crack prior to 1985 when Farrakhan spoke at Madison Square Garden in New York, and nearly 50,000 people came out to hear him. The fact of the matter is that in the 60s, when blacks began moving in the civil rights movement, a purer form of heroin was introduced into the black community. That is a fact.
So you think it might be the government?
I believe with all my heart that there's a dirty hand here somewhere. And if the government is not responsible, then help me clean it up.
What about AIDS, Minister Farrakhan? You've said the U.S. government is responsible for the spread of AIDS in Africa to decimate the African people.
I don't think those were my exact words.
Let me read them to you, and
Sure.
let's clear it up, because I really want this to be correct. Yeah, you said. We're going to interrupt this program for a special bulletin. We will pause for a moment first to let our other stations around the nation join us.
I'm Peter Jennings at ABC News headquarters. We have heard just a couple of minutes ago that President Nixon may have died, and we emphasize that is a rumor at this point. We say so because President Clinton has decided he's going to come to the White House cameras in a very short period from now and make some statement, and virtually all of our sources say that it has to do with President Nixon. But as soon as we're able to confirm that for you, we will be right back.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
We return now to 2020 in progress. Minister Farrakhan is very convincing in expressing his beliefs, but we checked on his claims about AIDS and crack, and I'd like to tell you what we found. Expert researchers and sociologists not associated with the government say that crack was already deeply entrenched in major U.S. cities prior to Minister Farrakhan's 1985 speech, and that the principal agent of its distribution was not the U.S. government, but illegal.
This is a special report from ABC News. Now reporting from New York, Peter Jennings.
We're now absolutely able to confirm that President Nixon has died here in New York City. He died at 9:08 p.m., 37th President of the United States, one of the most controversial political figures in the post-war period. He was 81 years old. We have believed for many hours that death was imminent. Let's go to New York Hospital, where Bob Jameson is standing by.
Peter, officials here at New York Hospital, where the president has been in the intensive care unit since Tuesday, confirmed that he died at 9:08 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, which is about an hour and 20 minutes ago. The officials issued a very simple one-paragraph statement which said that he died as a result of the massive stroke which he suffered on Monday at his home in New Jersey. You will remember that he was brought to the hospital here from that home in New Jersey, and for a while on Tuesday it was felt he was getting better. But then he was returned to the intensive care unit after his condition apparently stabilized because of massive swelling in his brain, which was a complication of the stroke, an ominous sign that is considered one of the most feared complications of a stroke. He fell into a deep coma yesterday, and by most accounts, his condition deteriorated steadily, and death had been considered imminent all day long. The only thing we can add at this point is that his family, at least his daughters, Tricia Nixon Cox and Julie Nixon Eisenhower, were with him at the time of the death. We also believe that Mrs. Cox's husband, lawyer Edward Cox, was with them. We do not know about Julie Eisenhower's husband, David Eisenhower. From here, what happens next, we are not quite certain, although we are waiting to hear what President Clinton says in the announcement, but it is believed that after some sort of mortuary procedure here, that the former president will be taken back to New Jersey, which has been the state of his residence for some time.
Jameson at New York Hospital. We'll go back there as things develop. Remember that Pat Nixon, the president's wife, died only last June, and the family has been here in New York, as Bob Jameson said. We believe they went out for dinner a while ago, but as we said, this has been pretty much expected for much of the day. Not going to tell Americans anything most of you don't know at the moment. Some people loved and respected Richard Nixon. Some hated him. Very few were indifferent. He was one of the most controversial American political figures of the century. As we said, his career began in controversy, and it never changed when we look back. He was a public figure on the American political stage for nearly half a century. Richard Nixon accomplished great goals in foreign policy. He was the only president to resign in disgrace from office. He was born in Yorba Linda, California in 1913, the son of Quaker parents. Having worked his way through college and law school, In 1940, he married Patricia Ryan. 2 years later, he went into the Navy. In 1946, the country was preoccupied with communism. Richard Nixon ran for Congress. He accused his Democratic opponent of being soft on communism. He won. Arriving in Washington, Nixon got a seat in the House Un-American Activities Committee, coming to national attention during the investigation of the State Department official Alger Hiss.
In penetrating to the bedrock of the facts relevant to the charge which you have publicized.
In 1950, he ran for the Senate, and this time he accused his opponent Helen Gahagan Douglas of being soft on communism. She accused him of Nazi tactics, but he won. He was in the Senate at 37. Only 2 years later, the Republican leadership chose him to be Dwight Eisenhower's running mate in the presidential campaign. But soon reports surfaced of a secret fund given to Nixon by wealthy California contributors. Leading Republicans questioned his usefulness to the ticket. But in a dramatic television speech, Nixon took his case to the people. He denied taking money. He did say he had accepted one gift.
You know what it was? It was a little Cocker Spaniel dog in a crate that he'd sent all the way from Texas. Black and white, spotted. And our little girl, Tricia, the 6-year-old, named it Checker. And you know, the kids, like all kids, love the dog. And I just want to say this right now, that regardless of what they say about it, we're going to keep it.
After the Checker speech, he got 1 million telegrams of support, and it saved his place on the ticket. On January 1953, he and President Eisenhower were sworn in. 7 years later, having been one of the country's most visible vice presidents, he ran for the presidency against John F. Kennedy. In the first nationally televised presidential debate, Nixon appeared nervous and defensive. He blamed poor lighting and a bad makeup job, and he lost the election, though it was very close. 2 years later, Nixon ran for governor of California and lost again.
Just think how much you're going to be missing. You don't have Nixon to kick around anymore. Because, gentlemen, this is my last press conference.
Not by any means. In 1968, Richard Nixon was back, and in 1969, he was president.
Having lost a close one 8 years ago and having won a close one this year, I can say this: winning's a lot more fun.
It was a bad time for America. Vietnam, student demonstrations, and the defining trauma of the Nixon presidency, Watergate, an illegal break-in for political gain, and a cover-up that went all the way to the top. After more than a year, Watergate brought him down.
Including primarily the president, that the whole story of the Watergate should be made public.
While he continued to struggle at home, no one can deny Nixon's success abroad. An historic reopening of relations with China after almost 30 years. The beginning of a new and fruitful strategic arms reduction process with the Soviet Union. An end, finally, to the war in Vietnam. The brief history of one of America's most controversial politicians. And finally, the first president ever to resign from office.
Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Under threat of impeachment by the Congress, Richard Nixon resigned. He said goodbye to his White House staff in the East Room.
Always give your best. Never get discouraged. Never be petty. Always remember, others may hate you. But those who hate you don't win unless you hate them. And then you destroy yourself.